This act of generosity involved paying off the collective debt of an entire community. Such community debt relief is a documented financial mechanism, though rare in practice. The scale of this action is comparable to other large-scale philanthropic gestures. Financial windfalls can lead to various outcomes, from personal spending to public benefit. The decision to prioritize communal relief over individual gain reflects a specific value system. This pattern of using sudden wealth for debt cancellation is an extreme example within broader economic behavior. This incident occurred in a small, tight-knit community in the United States in the early 2000s. The community was characterized by shared values and long-standing interpersonal connections. Sudden, significant wealth entering such an environment can create complex social dynamics. Initial reactions to newfound prosperity are often positive, seen as a shared success. Over time, perceptions can shift from gratitude to expectation. When expectations are not met, resentment can begin to fester within the community fabric. This case demonstrates how economic disparity can strain even the closest social bonds. The final, destructive act was the burning of the home, a documented escalation from social tension. The financial strain was a common reality for many small communities, often resulting from industrial decline or reduced local employment opportunities. Lottery jackpots represent a sudden, massive injection of capital into a local economy, creating both opportunities and complex social dynamics. Unlike distant benefactors, a local winner remains embedded within existing social networks and power structures. This integration means the winner's decisions directly affect neighbors, friends, and local businesses they interact with daily. Initial community celebration is a typical psychological response, fueled by shared hope and the human tendency toward optimistic projection. Such scenarios create a unique pressure point, where personal wealth intersects with collective community needs and expectations. The dynamic shifts from abstract financial problems to concrete questions about resource allocation and social responsibility. This creates a real-world case study in how sudden wealth affects community cohesion and decision-making processes. The decision to use lottery winnings to settle municipal debts was a public and personal act. This financial gift was intended to lift a burden from friends and neighbors in the community. Several key facts about this event are documented in public records from that period. Media reports from the time provide additional context about the transaction and its impact. Such acts of using personal wealth for public debt relief are rare but documented occurrences. The transparency of this action made it both a financial solution and a social statement. The financial relief was immediate and substantial, freeing municipal resources previously allocated to debt service. This type of large-scale philanthropic debt clearance is rare, but follows documented patterns of community-focused giving. Municipal budgets typically allocate significant portions to interest payments and principal repayments on outstanding obligations. When these debts are eliminated, funds can be redirected toward infrastructure, public safety, or community programs. The public response was overwhelmingly positive, as such interventions directly impact residents' quality of life. This scale of donation, over $1 million, represents a significant financial commitment by the benefactor. Similar philanthropic patterns exist where wealthy individuals target specific community financial burdens for elimination. The mechanism involves direct payment to creditors rather than cash transfers to the municipal government. This dynamic shift is a documented pattern in sudden wealth cases, where recipients face overwhelming social pressure. The initial gift, whether a lottery win, inheritance, or legal settlement, creates an immediate change in social standing. Requests begin almost immediately, transforming what should be private good fortune into public property in the eyes of others. This phenomenon extends beyond organized charities to include personal networks, where former relationships are reevaluated through a financial lens. The sense of entitlement observed in these cases often stems from perceived proximity to the wealth, regardless of actual relationship depth. Psychological research identifies this as a form of social contract violation, where communal expectations override individual rights. The constant targeting creates a paradox where financial gain leads to social isolation, as trust erodes under continuous pressure. This pattern mirrors documented cases where sudden wealth recipients report feeling like targets rather than beneficiaries. The winner's sudden wealth triggered a predictable pattern of financial requests from acquaintances and strangers alike. These ranged from straightforward loan applications to aggressive investment pitches and direct demands for cash transfers. This influx created a constant, draining pressure that transformed the winner's private life into a public spectacle. Reports documented individuals appearing at the winner's residence at all hours, disregarding normal boundaries of privacy. This phenomenon is not unique. Sudden lottery or contest winners often experience similar invasions, a documented psychological and social stressor. The mechanism is clear. Perceived access to large sums of money can alter social dynamics, leading to entitlement and boundary violations. The resulting stress from this public exposure and constant solicitation became a significant, ongoing burden. This pattern illustrates how a single financial event can dismantle personal privacy and create sustained psychological pressure. The winner's attempts to establish personal boundaries were systematically undermined. Any refusal was framed not as a personal choice, but as an act of greed and betrayal against the community. This psychological pressure represents a common pattern in group dynamics, where dissent is reframed as moral failure. The conflict escalated from verbal pressure to tangible acts of property damage. Vandalism served as both a punishment and a public warning, a tactic seen in various disputes over resources or status. Threatening communications followed, creating an atmosphere of sustained fear and intimidation for the individual. This progression from social coercion to targeted harassment is a documented escalation pattern in interpersonal conflicts. These combined pressures set the stage for the subsequent, more catastrophic event. Investigators confirmed the fire at his home was an act of arson, intentionally set to destroy the property. While no official motive for the arson was conclusively proven in court, the documented timeline points to a connection. This connection links the attack to the pressures he faced following his lottery win. Arson investigations typically analyze burn patterns, accelerant residues, and point of origin to determine intentionality. Such targeted property destruction often follows patterns of escalating harassment against individuals who experience sudden wealth. The absence of a proven legal motive doesn't eliminate the factual correlation established by the investigation's timeline. The arson investigation faced significant limitations from the outset. Unlike many criminal cases, the precise identities of those responsible remain unconfirmed in official records. This creates a common misconception that the case was fully solved or that perpetrators were publicly identified. The exact personal motivations behind the arson are not documented in available investigative materials. This information gap is typical in arson investigations where evidence is destroyed by the fire itself. The legal outcome, including any prosecutions or settlements, was not widely reported in national media. This limited public documentation contrasts with more extensively covered criminal cases from the same period. The absence of comprehensive reporting creates challenges for researchers attempting to reconstruct events. The common narrative suggests the entire community turned against the winner, but this is an oversimplification of what occurred. Historical analysis of similar incidents shows that collective blame often masks more complex social dynamics. In reality, it was likely a smaller subset of individuals whose actions created the documented atmosphere. This pattern appears in documented cases where fear spreads through specific social channels rather than entire populations. The actions of this minority can generate disproportionate effects, influencing perceptions and creating hostile environments. This mechanism explains how localized conflicts can be misinterpreted as widespread community condemnation. Documented social psychology shows how vocal minorities can shape narratives and create atmospheres of fear. Understanding this distinction between widespread sentiment and concentrated action is crucial for accurate historical interpretation. The escalation horrified many residents, revealing the community's fracture. This was not a supernatural curse of the lottery. No ghosts or demons were involved. The real forces were entirely human, rooted in psychology and social dynamics. Sudden wealth can trigger psychological shifts, altering behavior and perception. Fractured community dynamics often emerge when shared resources become unequal. A toxic sense of entitlement can follow public gifts, leading to conflict and resentment. This pattern mirrors other real-world cases, where windfalls disrupted social bonds. Understanding these mechanisms helps demystify the events, grounding them in human nature. The initial act was not naive generosity, but a calculated solution to a community problem. This pattern appears in historical cases where practical solutions are later reinterpreted. The tragedy emerges when a beneficial action becomes weaponized against its originator. This weaponization often follows predictable social and psychological mechanisms. Similar dynamics occur in documented cases where community leaders face backlash. The core tragedy lies in the reversal of intention versus outcome. This demonstrates how solutions can be reframed as vulnerabilities in retrospect. The pattern shows the distance between initial calculation and eventual consequence. The psychology of public generosity reveals a fascinating paradox. When a gift is given openly on a large scale, it can create unintended social dynamics. This phenomenon is not unique to lottery wins, but appears in various documented cases of public philanthropy. The open ledger effect describes how public generosity can be perceived as an ongoing obligation rather than a single act. This pattern has been observed in psychological studies of gift-giving and social reciprocity. Unlike private donations, public gifts enter collective awareness and create different expectations. The mechanism involves how public perception transforms a one-time event into a perceived social contract. This creates practical challenges for both the giver and the community receiving the generosity. This psychological shift transforms a single generous act into a perceived ongoing obligation. Financial professionals frequently advise lottery winners and inheritance recipients to give anonymously. This strategic anonymity serves to protect both the gift itself and the giver from unintended consequences. Without such precautions, A one-time windfall can create complex social and financial pressures. The situation underscores why comprehensive legal and financial planning is critical after receiving significant funds. Proper planning helps manage expectations and preserves the positive intent behind the original act. This includes setting up legal structures for giving, having professional gatekeepers to manage requests, and maintaining strict privacy about one's new address and daily routines. Lawyers and financial advisors serve as professional gatekeepers who filter and manage incoming requests according to established protocols. Maintaining privacy involves measures like keeping new addresses confidential and controlling information about daily routines. No is a necessary and complete financial strategy in these situations. This approach represents a boundary-setting mechanism that prevents financial overextension. On a community level, it's a lesson in the dangers of collective dependency and entitlement. Collective dependency occurs when groups develop expectations of continuous support without reciprocal contribution. Entitlement in these contexts refers to assumed rights to another's resources without mutual agreement. This psychological shift from gratitude to expectation is documented in various community aid scenarios. Single interventions often create dependency patterns, while sustainable approaches build lasting resilience. This phenomenon appears in disaster relief, economic development, and social welfare programs worldwide. The initial relief of immediate crisis can obscure the need for systemic solutions. Sustainable approaches require more initial planning, but prevent recurring crises. This documented pattern reflects fundamental aspects of human psychology and social dynamics. The transition highlights why long-term solutions, though less immediately dramatic, prove more effective. This represents a recurring challenge in addressing complex human and community needs. This dynamic is observed in real-world cases where public generosity creates unforeseen pressures. The initial act, intended to provide relief, can attract overwhelming public attention and financial expectations. This pressure often stems from external parties seeking to benefit from the situation, shifting the focus from aid to exploitation. The recipient's personal boundaries and safety can become compromised as private matters are forced into the public domain. This pattern mirrors documented incidents where well-meaning interventions led to increased scrutiny and loss of autonomy. The core lesson is not to avoid generosity, but to implement safeguards that protect the individual's peace during the process. Understanding these complex consequences requires examining the mechanisms of public expectation and financial dependency. Ultimately, the goal is to ensure that aid strengthens an individual's position without becoming the source of their vulnerability.